Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. It all started on a quiet afternoon when I was doing some cleaning in the basement. I had been in and out of that space countless times, but that day, something caught my eye, a door. A door I had never noticed before. It was old, slightly dusty, and had a rusty lock on it. My heart skipped a beat. How had I never seen it? Was it always there? The more I stared, the more uneasy I felt. My husband, Daniel, had never mentioned it, and we had lived in this house for years. I ran my fingers over the cold metal, feeling a rush of curiosity and dread. Why was it locked? And what was behind it? I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just an old storage closet Daniel forgot about. But something didn't sit right with me. That night, as I was putting away laundry, I found a small, unfamiliar key in Daniel's sock drawer. My hands trembled as I held it. Could this be for the locked door? My heart pounded as I debated whether I should try it. What if I found something I wasn't supposed to see? But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to open that door. The next morning, after Daniel left for work, I went straight to the basement with the key clutched in my hand. I took a deep breath, slid it into the lock, and turned. Click! The door creaked open slowly, revealing darkness. My pulse raced as I reached for the light switch on the wall. When the dim yellow bulb flickered on, my stomach twisted. This wasn't just a storage room. It was something else. The room was small, but filled with things I couldn't understand. There was a desk covered in papers, photos, and a laptop. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with old books and files. But what shocked me most was the second closet in the back. When I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were clothes. Not Daniel's, but someone else's. Women's clothing. Different sizes, different styles. Some looked new, others old. My hands shook as I stepped back. What was this? Who did these belong to? And why had my husband hidden them? I felt dizzy as I scanned the room, looking for any clue that made sense. That's when I saw a small wooden box on the desk. My fingers trembled as I opened it, revealing stacks of letters, handwritten, carefully folded. Some were tied with a ribbon, others stuffed inside haphazardly. My breath caught as I saw the names on the envelopes. Some had Daniel's name, others had mine, but I had never seen these letters before. My heart pounded. What was my husband hiding? The letters were old, some dating back to when we first met. As I read, a chill crept up my spine. They weren't love letters, not in the way I thought they would be. They were full of cryptic messages, mentions of meetings, and places I had never heard of. Some were signed with initials, others with names I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I continued reading. It seemed my husband had been leading a double life. The person I thought I knew was nothing like the one in these letters. Who was he really? And why had he never told me? I couldn't stop reading. The letters were like a puzzle, each piece leading to more questions than answers. One letter stood out, its contents even more unsettling than the rest. It was a note from someone named Jay. It mentioned a trip, an event where Daniel was supposed to meet someone important, but the language was strange. It didn't sound like the Daniel I knew. This Jay had referred to him as the man who could be trusted. What did that mean? I felt the ground shift beneath me. The more I read, the more it became clear there was so much I didn't know about my husband. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could Daniel have kept such secrets from me for all these years? The more I thought about it, the more I realized he had always been a bit mysterious, but I had always brushed it off as just his nature. Now, the pieces didn't fit. He had told me he was working late on business trips, but had he really been doing that? Or was there more to the story? I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to find out everything. Who was this Jay? Why had Daniel been meeting with them? Among the letters was a photo. I didn't recognize the faces, but the setting looked familiar. It was a picture of a hotel, one I had stayed at with Daniel a few months ago. But the people in the photo weren't us. There was a woman in the background, standing close to Daniel. Her arm was around him, and they were smiling, too comfortably, too intimately. My stomach churned. I zoomed in on her face. I didn't know her, but she was someone important enough to be with Daniel in a place we had visited together. What was going on? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with all the things I had uncovered. My head spun with questions. I had to talk to someone, to get some clarity. I called my best friend, Rachel. She had known Daniel for years, and I had always trusted her. But as I started explaining everything I had found, I noticed something odd in her silence. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't as surprised as I thought she should be. In fact, she almost sounded cautious. Maybe you should talk to Daniel about this first, she said, her voice distant. I frowned, confused. Why wasn't she more concerned? The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel's strange response. Why had she sounded so distant? I had always trusted her, but now doubt crept into my mind. Had she known something? Had she been keeping something from me? I decided to confront her, but every time I tried to call, she didn't answer. Was she avoiding me? Or was I just overthinking it all? I had so many questions about Daniel, about Rachel, about everything. And yet, the more I learned, the more I realized how little I truly knew. The letters weren't the only clues in the room. I found a calendar buried under a stack of papers. At first, it seemed like a simple planner, but as I flipped through it, I saw that some dates had been circled in red ink. A few names were written next to them, names I didn't recognize. And there were cryptic notes. The meeting place is set. Be careful. They're watching. And don't tell her yet. Each note made my skin crawl. It was clear now that Daniel was involved in something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. But what was it? Behind the desk, I found a drawer that seemed to have been tampered with. Inside were stacks of legal documents, contracts, and what appeared to be confidential files. As I flipped through them, my heart stopped. There were financial records, investment papers, and plans for an escape. The language was vague, but it seemed like Daniel was preparing for something big. My mind raced. Had he been planning to leave me? Was he involved in something illegal? Or was this about something else entirely? That night, after Daniel came home, I couldn't help but feel like I was walking on eggshells. He acted normal, almost too normal, as if nothing had changed. But I could tell something was off. I stayed quiet, waiting for the right moment to confront him. Later that evening, as I sat in the living room, my phone buzzed. It was a text message, but it wasn't from anyone I recognized. The message simply read, "Be careful what you uncover. It's not what you think." My breath caught in my throat. Was this a warning? Who knew about what I had found? The next day, I could no longer keep my silence. I waited until Daniel was alone in the study, and then I walked in, the letters and documents in hand. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Daniel turned pale when he saw the papers. His eyes darted around, and for the first time, I saw him look genuinely nervous. "What is all this, Daniel?" I asked, my heart pounding. "What are you hiding from me?" He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel like I knew the man I had spent my life with. Daniel remained silent for a long moment, staring at the papers in my hand as if he had never seen them before. The tension in the room was suffocating. My mind raced, trying to piece together everything I had uncovered. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want you to find out like this." His words made my stomach drop. "What does that mean, Daniel?" I demanded. But instead of answering, he just shook his head. "It's complicated. It's not what you think." But I wasn't convinced. I needed answers, and he wasn't giving me any. After what felt like hours of silence, Daniel finally broke. "I've been involved in something dangerous," he said, his voice trembling. "I never meant for you to get mixed up in it." My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of danger?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, regret in his eyes. "It's not about us. It's about the people I've been dealing with. They're not people you want to know." His words only raised more questions. Who were these people? And why had he kept me in the dark for so long? Daniel's confession left me reeling, but I could tell there was more he wasn't telling me. He kept saying he didn't want me involved, that it was too dangerous for me to understand. But why had he hidden so much from me? Why was I always the last to know? It didn't make sense. The deeper I dug into his secrets, the more I realized how much of our life together had been a lie. The man I thought I knew, the man I had married, was not the same person standing before me. That night, after Daniel had gone to bed, I sat alone in the study, reading through the papers again. The more I looked, the clearer it became. There was an escape plan, a list of contacts, and money set aside in different accounts. He had been planning to leave, or maybe disappear altogether. My mind raced. Had he been planning on leaving me for someone else? Or was there something darker at play? What was the real reason behind his secrecy? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and I couldn't trust him anymore. The next day, Daniel seemed off, more distant than usual. I couldn't help but feel like he was hiding something more, and this time, I wasn't going to wait around to find out. As I prepared to confront him again, I noticed something strange in the corner of the room. There was a small camera, hidden in the shadows. My heart raced. Had Daniel been watching me? Had he known I would find the hidden room and the documents? Or was there someone else involved? The feeling of being watched intensified, and I knew I couldn't trust him, or anyone, anymore. I stared at the camera, my mind racing with questions. How long had it been there? Why hadn't I noticed it before? It was small, almost invisible against the backdrop of the room, but now that I knew it was there, I couldn't unsee it. My chest tightened as I wondered who had placed it. Was Daniel spying on me? Or had someone else been watching me all along? I tore through the house, checking every room, every corner, but I found nothing else. No more cameras. No more hidden devices. Just that one. But the unease I felt grew with each passing minute. If Daniel was behind it, how deep did his secrets go? Later that evening, I received another text message. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a name. Call Emily, it read. She knows the truth. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Who was Emily? And why was someone reaching out to me, telling me to trust her? I thought about Daniel's warning, about him telling me to stay out of it, to ignore the clues. But how could I ignore this? I had to know what Emily knew, and I had to know why someone wanted me to contact her. I didn't waste any time. I dialed the number, my heart pounding in my chest. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered. Hello, she said, her tone cool, almost too calm. Emily, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Who are you? What do you know about my husband? There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. I knew this day would come. You need to listen carefully. Everything you've uncovered is just the beginning. My stomach twisted. What did she mean by that? And why did she sound so sure of herself? Emily's voice was firm as she continued. Daniel has been living a double life for years. But you're not just married to him. He's in deeper than you realize. I don't have all the answers, but I can help you understand what's going on. My mind raced as I tried to process what she was saying. Daniel had been involved in something dangerous, something that was far bigger than I ever imagined. And now, Emily was telling me she could help me unravel it. But could I trust her? Or was this just another part of the web of lies Daniel had spun around me? Emily began to tell me things I could barely believe. She explained that Daniel wasn't just involved in shady deals or secret meetings. He had been working for an underground organization for years. They had their hands in everything: money laundering, illegal investments, high-stakes gambling. But that wasn't even the worst part. Emily's words sent a cold chill through me as she revealed that Daniel had been keeping tabs on me, watching me for years. She told me I had been under surveillance long before I ever discovered the hidden room. The man I had trusted with my life, my future, had been manipulating me all along. Emily's revelation hit me like a tidal wave. My mind couldn't fully grasp what she was saying. All these years, I had been living in a house built on lies, surrounded by secrets. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a life that wasn't mine. The worst part was that I didn't know who Daniel truly was anymore. Had our entire relationship been a lie? Had he only ever seen me as part of some bigger plan? I kept asking myself, how could I have missed all the signs? And now that I knew, what was I supposed to do with this truth? Before I could ask more questions, Emily's voice grew more urgent. Listen carefully, she said, her tone serious. You're not the only one looking for answers. There are others who are watching, and not all of them want you to uncover the truth. My heart raced. Who were these people? Was Daniel involved with them? Or was he just a pawn in something much darker? I felt like I was in over my head. I had already uncovered more than I ever expected, and now I was in a game I didn't fully understand. Emily's warning echoed in my mind. I had to be careful who I trusted. Days went by in a blur of confusion, suspicion, and fear. I couldn't focus on anything else. Every time Daniel left the house, I found myself going through every file, every scrap of paper I had uncovered. But I couldn't make sense of it. There were names I didn't recognize, plans that seemed to go nowhere, and financial figures that didn't add up. I realized I had to take action, but I didn't know where to start. Should I confront him again? Or was it time to take matters into my own hands? One evening, after Daniel had returned from yet another mysterious meeting, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood in front of him, holding up the stack of documents and photos. His face drained of color when he saw them. I need the truth, Daniel, I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. I've uncovered too much. I know about the hidden room. I know about the cameras. And I know about Emily. He looked away, his jaw tightening. You don't understand. I never wanted you to be part of this. But I can't stop it now. It's too late. My heart sank. What did he mean by too late? I stared at Daniel, feeling a mix of heartbreak and disbelief. So this is it. You're telling me everything we've built together, our marriage, was just a part of this plan? I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't respond at first, just stood there, frozen in place. I never wanted to hurt you, he finally said, his voice hollow. But now you know too much. And I can't protect you anymore. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. My whole life had been a lie, and I was standing at the edge of a decision that would change everything. Could I leave him behind? Could I walk away from the life I had built with him? Or was I already too far gone? Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.